Okay, Natalie, one thing I should teach you here is here's the chapters, okay? There's 8 units in one chapter. Function notation, relations and functions, function notation, exploring the properties of parent graphs, domain and range, inverse function, very important, transformations you're coming to, horizontal stretches you're coming to, and the general form. But that's not what I want to teach you. If you go to the end of each unit, they always give a summary. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. In summary, a function is a relationship in which each value of the independent variable corresponds with only one value of the dependent variable, which means x's don't repeat. Sometimes they come in words, a table of values, a set of ordered pairs, a graph, a mapping diagram, or an equation. In the domain, there's all the x values that are possible, and the range, all the y variables, and the vertical line test, and you can see that it sort of summarizes it. But then here are some questions that you should probably try. You should probably try the basics. Those are the basics. And you should always do like a couple of these and make sure you can do it. Then you go to the next one, function notation. So instead of putting y is equal to something, they do f of x, where you're putting a value in for x and solving it. For instance, f of 2 means you're putting 2 in for x. So 3 minus 3 times 2 is minus 6. So 2 minus 6 is minus 4. So f of 2 is equal to minus 4. That's the same as saying that y is equal to minus 4 when x is 2. That's all function notation is. The reason I do function notation is because you don't really want to constantly be writing y when the function can stand for anything. And then you should always do some practice of it. But the summary of this chapter is f of x reads f at x or f of x. It represents the value of y when you put this value of x into the formula. And then it gives you an example. Parent functions, you and I sort of covered that a little bit. See, they kind of go over the generalization of a linear function, a quadratic function, square root function, also called doesn't matter, reciprocal function, absolute function. Radical was what I was looking for. And that's just a summary. And then they go determining the domain and range of functions. So again, it depends on the function itself, and you have to know certain things about certain functions. We should also address when functions have been transformed, what happens to the range, because that's what they go through here, or the domain. And then they go through it again, and they ask you to do a couple things. Then there's a mid-chapter review. Make sure you understand it. The inverse function, very important skill to learn, how to switch the x and the y's and solve. Something we should go over, and I believe I have a video on it. And it just goes in detail, gives one example, the inverse of fx of 5x plus 8 is this, and how they came about it. There's some things about inverse functions that you and I should discuss. Exploring transformations are when you take the parent function and you change them slightly. It can look like this. This is clearly a root function, but something's happened to the x and something's happened to the y, and we should go over why. And then what are these things? What are the transformations that occur, and why do you do it? So it just sort of discusses it. And then you always have the summary at the end. It's very important. If you want to just speed read it, you go straight to the summary. When you can't understand the summary, you have to go back to some of the notes. And then always try some practice questions, because that's what a test is, right? Then they put a generalized form. This is very complex. I'm not asking you to understand it yet. But they try to summarize how all transformations are readable, no matter what the function is. I summarize it. This one's a very confusing summary. But my point is, they all have a summary. They all have sample questions. It's good to just jump straight to the summary, figure out if you can do it from just that.